friends have never been more important than they are today. Everywhere you turn, there seems to be reasons to give up or not even try at all. We want to be the light in these times and an inspiration for others to keep pushing forward. My journey of growth comes through humility, and I welcome all who are looking to grow with me. Thanks for tuning in to the Crew First Culture Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome back once again. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Again, I've got a great guest with me here today, and I'm going to talk some culture like usual. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. And my guest today is right there with me. And without anything further, today I have Mr. Marc Aloan of the Fire Inside. How you doing, Marc?
I'm doing good, man. Appreciate you having me.
No problem. Been looking forward to this for a while. And anybody that's listened to at least several of my podcasts, they've kind of heard the spiel before. So I want to make sure that I say that before I say this, I am being very genuine. I I tend to have people on here, especially here in the kind of the beginning stage, that mean something to me in my journey, or what they are saying really speaks to me, or something like that. And that is no different with you, Marc. I've kind of talked to you a little bit when wanting to bring you on, and you were really one of the first people that I reached out to, and just for information and some inspiration in this journey of the social media and things like that. And so I really appreciate everything that you've done, just kind of guidance and writing articles and things like that as well. So I really try to have people on like that, and so I'm excited to have you on, because that's where you're at. You're on that list, and I appreciate it.
Very cool. I appreciate being on that list. I don't know. I don't think of myself that way sometimes, but it's all about the receiver, right? What people get out of your message.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it's one of the things where everybody has maybe a little bit of a twist on a different or the same kind of message, and what I say is basically the same as what Tom says, but I say it a little bit different, and maybe I speak to somebody differently than somebody else. And so I appreciate that, and it's just good to kind of get some different, I don't know what you want to call it, different, the same message in different ways, I guess. And so I really have enjoyed having guests on here lately that really just do a good job of sharing that message, even though that we may be saying the same things. We're on the same team, but we all have a little bit different ways of giving it. So it's been enjoyable, and I'm sure that you've kind of enjoyed the same type thing with what you got going on as well. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. I think the coolest thing about doing anything with social media and instructing and the training groups and stuff is just finding those perspectives and finding a lot of the time people that are able to maybe articulate or demonstrate what you're trying to get across in a better way. It helps you to do so, in your own life, in your own department. And I hope I'm not getting the who I'm going to quote for this wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was James Gearing on his podcast who said, I found out long ago that my purpose was to be a microphone, right? It was to basically take other people's messages and share them with everybody. It's not always about being original. And I found in my career a lot of time too that maybe I resonate with you, but the other three guys on your crew I don't, right? But now
Yep.
they're able to listen to you, and we all have different character, and we all have different preferences and biases. So I don't really think you can repeat the right message too many times, because you're
Yep.
always going to find somebody else that gets something out of it.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it. And as usual, I've kind of jumped ahead of myself, and not allowed you to really kind of introduce who you are and where you're from, things like that. And this is just give us a little bio. If you want to say a lot, say a lot. If you just want to kind of give the basic information, then just kind of introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you ask me, that's probably the least important part of it, right? I'm all about the message at the end of the day. But yeah, so like you said, my name is Marc Aloan. I run the Fire Inside, which is kind of like a social media blog type thing. I've been in the fire service since 2001. I was a volunteer in my hometown growing up. Did a brief stint in the Air Force when paramedic school did not work out for me at a young age. I was a little too immature. You could argue I still am, but uh, college wasn't for me then. So I went and got a little structure in the military, kind of got some things straight. I was fortunate to get a job, a career job when I got out of the county I live in. I worked there for about 12 years, I think. And just in the past year, I took a lateral position with the West Columbia Fire Department in South Carolina as a captain there. So that's been a kind of a cool transition, able to see kind of a different side of the fire service from a fairly large department to a very small department. Just, um, I don't know, I would say validating, but just kind of helps you gain perspective, I guess, on what you're trying to do in the fire service.
Yeah.
Somewhere along that journey, I got into social media through some mentors of mine. Mainly Jared Sergi was a big one for me. We had got messaging through his page, Trial by Fire. Um, and so I found that I kind of had, I guess, a talent for writing. I guess, I don't, some days I see it, some days I don't, but a lot of people say I have a way with writing things. So
Yeah.
that kind of blossomed into some teaching opportunities. And I've been extremely fortunate over the years here, the past, 3 or 4 years that I've taught from coast to coast, from departments to big conferences. And, more importantly, the circle of people I've met along the way has been tremendous for my own growth and my own career. And I've never thought I would have some of the people I have in my phone book, readily available to call. So without taking up too much time, then, that's me. I'm just, I start most of my class I teach, I'm not some big time guy. I haven't been to 1,000 fires. Truth be told, I've never made a grab in a fire. I've just always been attracted to this profession, since I can remember. And, I don't think you have to be great at something to be passionate about it. So I just, I try every day to be better. And some days I do that, and some days I fail. And it's just, it's a constant struggle. But, I think at the end of the day, it's worth it, with what we do. And you can positively impact people along your journey, then why not, right?
Absolutely. That kind of that last sentence that you just ended with, that's probably I would just kind of foreseeing this conversation going, being the general, I don't know, feel of this conversation is just we're not your Broadway title names, the huge names of the industry and having fires and grabs and all that, but that's what we have in common is we want to get, even if it's a little bit better than yesterday, work to learn something every day, work to grow just a little bit, whatever it is. And man, that is exactly where I'm at right now. And to tell you the truth, on days that doesn't happen, days that things just come up and you get bogged down with stuff you don't want to be doing, it really affects me as just my mood. I feel it. And yesterday was literally one of those days. It was one of the days you get sucked into EMS classes, and we were stuck in that all day long, literally all day. And at the end of the day, I was just like, man, I feel like this is a totally wasted day. And of course, somebody's going to get upset with that because I mean, EMS is what we do. That's the biggest part of what we do, and you got to be training in it, and you got to be learning in it as well. But it's just not what I enjoy doing, and it just kind of affects me if I'm not doing something enjoyable. So I totally get it for sure.
Absolutely.
So the and like I told you before we started recording, I'm sure we're just going to kind of jump around, and that's perfectly fine. I know, as you mentioned, you're doing the Fire Inside pages, and something else that you've been involved with is it, from my perspective, the first I heard about it was your Unlock the Culture conference that you did several months back, kind of towards the first of this whole quarantine, COVID, online crap. You guys did a really good job, had lots and lots of good presenters, and man, I really enjoyed all of that. And So I do want to kind of talk to you about your presentation in that. Now you have kind of piggybacked with some other great guys with your Unlock the Culture webcast, and I'm happy to see that's kind of you've piggybacked and kind of kept that going. So that's some good stuff. So we'll talk about all that, but I think that maybe is a good place to start. You know, your presentation during that really spoke to me in several ways. But you know, one of the things that really kind of lined up with where I'm at is you kind of went into talking about we get so hung up on, you know, if you're wearing a certain uniform that it looks, we got to look super professional, and you know we get hung up on all these details that from the citizen's perspective, does it really matter? You know, if we're there helping them in their worst time on their worst day, or do they care if somebody has a cross tattoo on his forearm, you know, or if they're wearing a t-shirt instead of a button up or a polo or a bat, you know, whatever. You know? And it, like I said, I am with you on that. And if you don't mind, just kind of go into more of your thinking instead of me putting words in your mouth of kind of that topic and go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So let me just start out by saying that conference, when I talked in the beginning about, the biggest thing I've taken from my experience with, having a platform and being able to teach is that circle. And that conference was a direct result of that circle. That, you hear it, it's cliche anymore in the fire service, right? Like the bar napkin is turned into a text message, right? As a group thread. And that's kind of where that started. It was a bunch of, my main circle of firefighters and instructors that I've met through my journeys, as COVID hit and people were kind of starting to do some conferences here and there, on the Zoom thing. And none of us knew anything about Zoom, but we kind of just said, hey, like, if nothing else, like for the sake of people that are willing to bring us in when things eventually return to whatever, they're going to be, we need to practice, right? It's just like training. If you're not presenting your content there for 9 months or 12 months, you're going to be rusty. So and I think we all got together and said, we would all feel very odd profiting from this because it just didn't feel right with the way the world was. And Zoom is at the time was very impersonal. It hadn't evolved yet into what we see it now. So we said, well, screw it, let's think of the best people we can get, and we'll get some money for some charities that came from people in that circle, things that were near and dear to them. And ironically, I think we started trying to do, we said, let's do it. Like, let's try to get every topic we can think of that fits into culture, which ballooned from like 2 days to 3 days. And you just kept adding people. And eventually it's like, okay, we got to stop somewhere. Right. But yeah, what a cool thing that was. And we raised a good bit of money, for some awesome charities there. And like I said, I learned a lot from that. And, to speak to my class, I kind of, it wasn't just me that planned that thing. I kind of ended up being the coordinator, I guess, for lack of a better term, in the end, just because I had, my situation, I had more time to do it. And I was fortunate to go at the end because I hope it came off like this, that my program kind of tied together, everything that had led up to it.
Yeah.
And so the class I did was building a tradition of passion. That's kind of, my main class that I teach, and it revolves around, that the importance of tradition in the fire service, but also, our job at some point is, I don't know that you can teach enthusiasm as much as you can demonstrate it, but trying to groom that, instead of putting it down, like seems to be happening in a lot of places where you take the people that are ate up with it and you outcast them for whatever reason. I don't know. The more I don't even want to say mature. The more experienced I get in all this, the more I can see why people react that way. I understand how I did not come across well for many years. I understand that I thought I was a lot better than I was for many years. So I kind of get that. But to tie it back to the class, the goal is just to get everybody thinking about their departments and the movers and the shakers and the personalities. And the example you brought up about the uniforms and untucked shirts, right? Like some of my best friends in the fire service will argue with me to the death over that because, and that I have military experience like they do. And some people are just, hey, you got to have it that way. And I'm of the mindset of, don't talk to me about seconds here and seconds there, but I got to change my shirt or tuck it in or turn my hat around. Like, that's not my priority, and to each their own, right? Like, I don't think you can go wrong looking presentable, right? And there's some citizens that'll
Oh yeah.
care about that, and there's some that won't. And I think more times than not, I try to look presentable. But if we're doing CPR, and my shirt comes untucked, or I choose to turn my hat around and get the bill out of my face, like, I really don't think that's something we need to hang on about. Now, do
Yeah.
you want to go meet the mayor like that? No, probably not, because it's just common sense. So, but that's just one of many topics that kind of bounce off the theme of polarization that has kind of become the backbone of that class as it's evolved and, been tweaked with my experience and then teaching it, talking to other people about their experiences. Just that, and it's not even just the fire service, but I think the fire service is a good cross section of, you know, there's just everybody's way over to one side or the other of most of these issues. And the answer is really in the middle. And until we're able to kind of reel ourselves in and compromise, I guess, and not compromise in a, oh, well, I'll give you this one and take that one, but just really sitting down and getting the facts of things and understanding, like, just what we talked about, right? Like, okay, like, our goal and our expectation is that, your shirt will be tucked in, your hat will be forward, under most circumstances, with the understanding that in the, completion of your operational duties, that may not happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, there may come a time, and, if you're just walking around like a slob all the time, you're walking around like a slob all the time, that's worry. So, but yeah, the whole point of that class is just to kind of get people to take a look at their situation, their department, and departments around them, and be like, what are we fussing about that we don't need to, and what do we really need to harp on more because it's important to the outcome of the mission? And then that ties into the theme of basically just the personal accountability aspect, right? Like, everybody has a job, everybody has a job description, so just do yours before you point the finger at anybody else. Try to solve those problems at the lowest level. Treat people decently. That doesn't mean that you never bring up bad things or you never get mad at them and stuff, right? But just, it is what it is. We're at a firehouse. Things are going to happen. But if everybody just picked up their weight more often and stopped worrying about what other people are or not doing, and fix the problems as they go, I think things would be better for us overall.
Yeah. And when I kind of brought this up, I didn't want to sit here and give all sides of my opinion and take up 15 minutes before I even let you talk. But I knew we were going to kind of dig into it a little bit. But going back to kind of how I started it, I'm right with you. I think that most generally, yeah, we need to try to look decent. We need to try to look professional. Obviously, I am somebody that is not okay with just slobbing out all the time. I mean, comb your hair, look like you at least belong here. But when it comes to, my crew's working out and they're just a mess, dripping sweat, do we really have to go put on this nice shirt and clean ourselves up before we get in the truck? Like you said, it's like, we're getting pecked at every time we're wasting 5 or 10 seconds here and there, but then you're requiring this of us, and or if it's 100 degrees outside and we're required to wear all these other things when it's just a t-shirt, because it's just common sense, and because we're the people that you need to be taken care of. Why is it not okay for us to just, what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
it feels like we spend so much time worrying about all this stuff, but there may be crews that haven't pulled a line or haven't pulled a ladder out or done anything with an SCBA in 6 months. What about that? Why isn't that type of stuff getting the same attention as all this other little surface crap that to me really doesn't matter? And that's kind of where I was going, is that's the problem I have with it. Not necessarily that I feel like you can wear whatever you want to and all that, but
And I get that. And I think sadly what it comes down to is that, the appearance stuff is low hanging fruit a lot of the time,
oh yeah,
not only in the department, but also for the citizens too, right? So, if we go to a run at your house for whatever it is, doesn't matter, fire, medical, whatever, and you're not happy with the service that you got, you're going to key in on the obvious things that are easy to say. Well, they showed up here, right? Their attitudes are bad. And I knew their attitudes are bad because the one had his hat on backwards and the other one didn't have gloves on. His shirt was untucked, right? And I understand it. And it's true to a point. There are people that wholeheartedly buy into that. But I think it is perpetuated because I don't really know, for better or worse, that the public truly understands what exactly we do in the the operational portion of our duties, right?
Yeah.
And you can watch any number of videos on the news and stuff, and I'm, trust me, I am not one to get on there and try to knock somebody's operation through a single lens in time. But you know I would argue that you could probably burn somebody's house to the foundation 9 times out of 10 in your community, and as long as you are nice, respectful, and sort of look the part, they would go with it. And they don't understand what a botched hose deployment looks like. They don't understand that one firefighter should probably be able to throw a 24-foot ladder by themselves, right? They don't understand what a VES scenario should look like, and it doesn't. So I think we kind of have a long leash there operationally. And let's be honest, like the authority figures in our fire departments, like they don't see us operationally that much, below the company level, maybe the battalion level. So their experience with us and our behavior is very much has to do with the firehouse and whether we're following the policies. And like, again, what's the easier one to see? Like, I can tell if you look bad when you walk in the door, right? But how many times does your fire chief watch you pull a cross leg? And quite honestly, it's not his job, right? That's your company officer's job, that's your battalion chief's job. But I just don't think we're comfortable dealing with those things. And they take a lot more work too, right? Like, I can remedy you not tucking in your shirt very quickly, right? You're going to do it. You don't do it, I'm going to put paperwork on you. You still don't do it, we're going to get rid of you. But to fix your hose deployment, now we got to put in labor. We got to put in sweat. We got to figure out what's going on. And maybe it's me as the company officer, right? Maybe my teaching is not working. Maybe my methods are not up to date, right? So yeah. I just think it becomes a more complicated equation. And that's why we kind of get more of a pass on those operational things, and I know I'm pretty sure I've heard you talk about it before. I've heard a lot of guys, but this is where videoing yourself, right? Training and your operations. Like I get the hang up with the helmet cams and the dash cams from the administrative level, but maybe you don't got to share it all everywhere. Maybe you're picky about what you put on social media for your department, but man, look at athletes, right? That game film, it's not even about saying you did good or you did bad. It's about like, how can we improve? Like, here is your stretch in real time with a clock at the bottom of it, right? So what went right, what went wrong, how can you fix it? And until we get comfortable with that, or until the citizens decide to start, raising some red flags, like, hey, it took them 7 minutes to get here, and it took them 5 minutes to get water out of their fire engine that we paid, $600,000 for, and here it is on my cell phone. And I think that's probably gonna be the game changer for us, is all this Facebook Live and people putting you on Instagram. Is that, again, you got that clock now, and you can't fight that a lot of the time.
And that's that's interesting you brought up, and I'm glad you brought it up, the whole helmet cam thing. And I couldn't agree more. I don't think, and I've never owned one, so I can't speak personally of what I've used them for, but I can't think of a better way of learning more on anything, an incident or training, than watching a whatever you call it, a point of view filmed in real time of the actual whatever's going on. I mean, yeah, how can you get better than that? And I get it. Okay, you have to put things in place, rules in place, policies in place, whatever, of how all of that works, just to protect the department, protect the whoever's involved. Okay, I get it, and I do. But isn't that what we do for every single other thing in our job? I mean, we've got policies for everything. I don't understand why we can't make that work, because the benefits of it would be just, I don't think you could actually number the benefits, because
No.
like I said, even training, you mentioned that too. You just film. And that's one thing that bugs me about us is, I'm a part of a 5-person crew, sometimes 4, but we have 5 people at our station. And when we're training, I love filming or taking pictures of what we're doing and put them out there, just because I love doing it. but we're all doing something, and that's hard to do. And so yeah, you don't have any of that. You don't have the record of, hey, this is what we did on the VES last shift. Let's watch it and just see if we can do something better, or see what went well, see what went bad. And I just think there's so many things that could help, you know, us as a department, as a crew.
Yeah, and I think the fire service as a whole, we're notoriously resistant to technology and change, right? And you know that I won't say I understand it because I've never been a fire chief, but I can see the concerns from the administrative side with liability, and right, because once it's filmed, right, and once the public, look at the body cams with the cops, right, like I think it's probably saved a bunch of cops from wrongful accusations, and I
Oh yeah,
think it probably burned a bunch of them for not doing their job right, and I'm not
yeah,
about to go down that rabbit hole because nobody's going to win with that fight, but that's probably the best closest example we have to somebody that has started using film, right? Everybody wears a body cam now, and it's definitive, right? This happened or this didn't
yeah,
happen. There is what it is, and I can see where that would make you nervous as an administrator as far as liability, and because what if you do have people that go to a structure fire that becomes a fatality, right? And now you have video evidence that we didn't do right, and we all know that these chief officers are not even just publicly liable, but they're civilly liable now. So now I got to worry about my family, my house. So like I said, I get it, and there's 100 concerns with it, and I think we just haven't got there yet of how that fits into our mission, and how we're going to deal with it. And I think a lot of it will end up being training, right? Like we're not going to have excuses anymore. We're going to have to make sure our people are on their A game, because we are going to put film on them, and it ain't going to lie, and don't
yeah.
get me wrong, I am far from flawless on the fire ground, right?
Oh
I'm
yeah,
sure plenty of stuff that they can pick out about my operations, and that's fine. That's but I still think the overall good of it, as far as improvement, and even to the side of what the cops use it for a lot of time, like when we get in these situations where what our actions are called into question, like why can't that be a good thing for us? Well, don't worry, we've got dash cams and helmet cams, and oh, something came up in your missing your house. I can show you 15 angles that it wasn't our guys, right? So
yeah,
um, again, back to what I said in the beginning, balance, right, in the middle, right? Are there pros and cons of cameras on our firefighters? 100%. So we need to figure out how we get in that middle to where we understand that it does benefit us, but it can hurt us. So use it wisely.
no, absolutely. And that's a common theme in pretty much anything I say or talk about, is the balance. Either side of whatever topic you're on is not great. It's there's somewhere in that kind of middle ground that is probably the best place to be on pretty much anything you want to talk about. So totally agree with that. What so kind of getting into some of the I guess to lead into this next thing is I'll bring up the last article that I saw, at least you put out, and it's called The Engine Bay, one of our best traditions, and that was in Firehouse, I believe. Really enjoyed it. If anybody has not read that, I want to definitely lead you to that, because that really kind of echoed again just really some of my thoughts on just tradition and kind of camaraderie and all that stuff that I really want to create as a station officer at my house, my station, whatever you want to call it. And uh, what what kind of led you to that? Is that obviously a lot of personal kind of ties that brought you to writing that?
Yeah, kind of. I would call that an accidental article, to be honest with you. I'm very fortunate to have a great relationship with Pete Matthews, who's the editor for Firehouse, and he asked me, he had quite a deadline. He said, "Hey man, I need a piece. Do you think you work something up for me, kind of related to what you teach?" Because at that time, I think Expo was still on the table as far as events. It hadn't been canceled yet, and so ironically, when I sent it in, he's like, "Man, this is like not even close to what I was thinking you come out with, but I love it." Right? That is like it's and I had tried a couple other things. Writing's funny for me. Like I either can do it or I can't. So like if I sit down and
Yeah,
nothing comes out, I just got to walk away. Like some people could sit
yeah,
there and work at it, I can't. And so I had tried a couple other things and it didn't work. And what culture was kind of the theme of, obviously what we were looking for. And I just kind of thought back through my career of, whether it was personal things or professional things, but any time where I was kind of down or feeling lost or just, beat up or, whatever, when things weren't good, I always find myself in the bay. And sometimes it cheers me up and sometimes it doesn't. But I just think that, kind of like the article pointed to, is that, it doesn't matter if you come from a 4-person rural fire department or you're in a metro running a 7-bay headquarters station, right? The commonality between every firefighter is an engine bay, right? Some stations are only an engine bay. They don't have anything else. There is no offices, there's no data, none of that stuff. So I just kind of thought that if you really wanted to bring culture down to that common level, start there, right? And I was actually quite amazed at the, how receptive people were to it. I had a lot of people message me afterwards and, man, this is articulated so well. And I agree with all the things you wrote and, the sights and the smells and all that. And I just, I think the overall thing that when I got towards the end there, as I started writing it, it kind of evolved. And I was like, I think the fire service could use a feel good piece right now. I think that people are really bogged down with COVID, and rightfully so. And, there's, for those of us that are big into the training groups and the conferences, like that's a big hurt for your, mental health in a lot of ways, right? Most people use that to recharge and see their buddies and keep them going. So I just wanted to go with something, I guess, that everybody I thought could resonate with, and something that would maybe bring them back to that first day, that first time they walked in the firehouse. And that kind of, ties back on the other end to, how are we treating each other right now? Don't forget that, wide-eyed kid that was still, once amazed with this job as you're walking down the hall whining and complaining about everything, right? And, I do it, you do it, we're all guilty sometimes, but I think the more time we spend in the bay individually and as a group, I think the easier it is. Maybe we're still going to talk about the problems, but we're doing it together, right? We're not pointing fingers. We're just out there. And what a better example of embracing the suck of this job sometimes than not, being in the elements and the humidity or the cold or, the smells and all that stuff. So that's kind of where that went. I'm actually very proud of that one now. I'm not, people say I'm over humble. I guess sometimes I have a hard time with that whole, appreciation thing I get. But that one I was actually pretty proud of, because the more that I read it personally, I think the more I get out of it. And to your point, to start with, it is very personal, because it is a lot of what I write. People, sometimes take offense to it, or, they think I'm pointing a finger here or there. But I would bet you that 9 times out of 10, what I'm writing points right back at me, right? And maybe it's in the third person, or maybe it's around the bush, but I'm reading it just as much as everybody else, because sometimes that's how I have to speak to myself. Sometimes I can't get out of my own way, and that's my outlet is to put it on paper and read, hey, you just wrote this, idiot, you better put your money where your mouth is. So
Exactly. And that's kind of goes back to my conversation with Jeremy a couple episodes ago, and just the accountability that this whole platform, what we're doing, puts on us. It should really straighten us out as much as we can, because you can't hardly put things out like that and not try to back up everything you say. Hopefully you're not that kind of person, but the accountability that I've felt just through what I'm doing is pretty intense. It's sometimes I've really had to kind of focus on, okay, you can't do this stuff if you don't do better than you're doing. And it's been a struggle for me, this year is just really kind of up and down, and totally kind of feel that. It's funny that you say that about writing. That's exactly where I'm at. At the end of last year, the first of this year, I couldn't stop. It was just like the topics were just, they're backed up in my mind. And as soon as I started writing, they just flooded out, and I just couldn't stop writing. And then I started this podcast, and it's like, it went away, like totally drought, like nothing. I have not had any kind of desire to write anything. I haven't had anything on my mind to write anything, and it's just gone. And so it's just funny how you you kind of use different outlets to get things out, I guess.
Yeah, I'm very much, I've struggled to write much lately, and I think it's a reflection of just how things are in the world right now, right? Like everything is very routine, and it's, I feel like everybody's in a slump, not just in the fire service, but
Oh yeah.
um, and to your point too, I don't think people understand, and like I try to hold myself accountable, but I'm a human like everybody else, right? Like I have plenty of flaws, I make plenty of mistakes, and I think what sucks right now with the whole fire service narrative or discussion as a whole is just that, if somebody's willing to put themselves out there and write or speak or teach or all these things, there's this scope of perfection put on them, right? And people will just try to find, oh, oh, well, Mark's on there talking about accountability, but he left his med gloves in the cup holder last shift. And if that isn't an example of him not living up to his mantra, I just think that, you know, just because you're willing to put up a message or you're willing to share your experiences is not, I think people take it wrong. I'm
Yeah.
not sitting here talking to you because I think I'm better than anybody else. As a matter of fact, most of what led me to this was realizing that I'm actually worse than quite a few people that I've met and, worked with over the years. So, I just wish we could take that stigma away.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole other, you're out here trying to make money. If you knew how much money people put into these trainings and their programs and how much it costs to travel and
Time, time away
your,
from
yeah, the
family,
time
all
from
that.
your family, the time from, your own personal downtime, which is extremely valuable in this job. I just think people would be very surprised that the profit you make with any of this stuff is strictly your ability to help somebody else, right? Whether it's one people or 100 people, it's that email or that phone call or text message you get where like, hey, I was in a bad place and I read this, or I took your class, or I went to your training evolution, and now like it's like my ship has been righted, and that's what it's all about. I just don't think people understand that, and I don't know. I'll get off my soapbox now, but I just think it's always important to point out that you know having a vocal opinion of things is by no means for anybody I've ever met doing this trying to say, hey, I'm better than you. It's very much the opposite in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Uh, to kind of go back to where we were, that your uh, engine bay article. It's funny. I just read it this morning for the first time, but like I'd mentioned earlier, last shift, which just yesterday, I just it wasn't one of my favorite days. What we were doing and everything, and literally what that article talked about. That was my night. I went out to the bay, basically hung out by myself for a while. We got a little project going on, trying to fix up our bunker gear locker. And so I went out there and tore that down, started painting it. It is 9 o'clock at night and I'm doing this stuff. But that's what I needed. Is I just needed to get out and get out there. And that's something else that we haven't done in a little while, but me and a couple of other guys spent some time at night hanging out. We'll go get chairs and sit out in front of the engine, bay doors open, and just sit out there and hang out, talk out there. I'm not a TV person. I'm just not. One of the other guys I work with is kind of the same way. We just don't watch much TV, and especially towards the end of the day, the TV's been on all day. We're not necessarily watching it, but it's the same crap. Arnold movies, Stallone movies all day long, and so uh, by the end of the day, I'm just done. I don't care to sit in the recliner and watch anymore. And that's just personal. But to go outside and even if it's by myself sometimes, which it has been, and that's fine, enjoy that time outside by the engine, just kind of hanging out. If I get a buddy or two come out there with me, it's even better. But I I just think it's interesting that you write those things, and that is where I'm at. And I know there's a lot of other people out there that just that is a place that kind of brings it all back together. And I really appreciate it, kind of reading somebody else saying the same things that I'm thinking inside.
And so the irony is that, I it's funny on my day off, I love TV, right? Like that's my coping in a lot of ways. Is I literally just space out on the couch and watch some movie I've watched 400 times because it's
Yeah.
mindless. It has, guns and sirens, and it's, visually stimulating,
Uh-huh.
right? Um, but I've made it a bigger effort. I spent a lot of the first part of my career with people that's what we did. We just watched TV all day, mindless, stupid, stuff I would never even watch on my own. And so I've made a bigger effort, as I've, developed in a company officer to not be that person. And that's not to say I won't sit down and watch a movie with the crew
Oh
once in
yeah.
a while. But I'm like you, right? Like I just, I don't really enjoy it like I used to. And, I think, I can do that at the house. I don't have an engine bay at the house. I don't have awesome fire trucks and, the smell of old fires to kind of, sit in. But, so last night, I've got a new firefighter yesterday with his first 24-hour shift with us. And normally these days, I've got a decent commute to work and I'm up pretty early to get there, so I'm usually in bed about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock these days. Well, we sat out in that bay until almost midnight last night and
Yeah.
just had a chat, man. And he even, he made the comment, unprovoked, like, man, this is what it's all about to me, sitting out here, being around his stuff, talking. And this guy, like I said, this is his first shift. He probably doesn't even know I'm doing this podcast. He probably doesn't even know I wrote that article, right? So he has like literally no preconceived notion of trying to, say something that's going to,
Yeah.
get on my side. But, I think we both got as much out of it, sitting out there and just talking to him and his fresh perspective, a young guy, he's hungry. He wants to do the job. He just got hired. He's so ate up, he's all on cloud nine. And, like they say, it's contagious, right? That's good for me, right? To listen
Oh
to
yeah.
him talk about his experience thus far and, with what I'm doing with him and him appreciating it and, just, his thoughts on the fire service. And here I am, closing in on 20 years and they still line up with mine, which tells me I'm hopefully not out of touch, right? I haven't got there yet. So, but yeah, just kind of like you said, it's funny though, I'll sit out there by myself sometimes too. And it's not because I don't like people or whatever. Sometimes I just like, I think in 24 hours or 48 hours or shift you work, you have to have some time. You don't want to be around people, every bit of that time
Yeah.
at work. So what a better place to, to escape than out there and just get lost in, the feeling of the job that I don't think you can put in words. Everybody says I did in that article. I still don't, there's still parts of it that I can't describe with words. I think you just have to
Oh yeah.
experience it.
And right, right to tie it in with everything else that you've talked about, there's a balance there too. And that balance is, yeah, sometimes I will enjoy sitting down and watching a movie, like you said, with the guys, or, if they come up with a series on Netflix that they're really excited about, I want to do that with them because that's something they're interested in. So I want to make sure that I'm putting an investment into that for them as
Well,
well.
I watched the Lion. What was that thing on Netflix? The Lion one with the guy and Carol Baskin and whatever it was.
Oh, the Tiger
Tiger
King.
King. I watched that. I would never watch that, but yeah, I hear you. They were all in on that, so we sat there and caught up on it.
I've seen some of your posts back then, and you didn't seem to be real into it. So I
It's
am sure that it was
it's
not
amazing
a selfish thing.
people find entertaining these days.
Oh yeah,
You got to
yeah.
fight tooth and nail to go pull cross legs for an hour sometimes, but we'll sit there and watch 9 hours of this lunatic in his zoo in the middle of nowhere. It's crazy.
And that's exactly where kind of that back half of that comment that I was just making is I want to do that for those guys and spend that time with them and enjoy that for them. But at the same time, we're there for 24 hours. You got to give me some fire talk. That's where my interests are right now. That's where my passion is right now. Just give me some fire talk. Yeah, I don't want to talk about politics all day. I don't want to sit and just mindless chatter about everything. Yes, I want to enjoy conversations to get to know you and your family and things like that. I'm not trying to say that. But just pointless talk about video games and just whatever else all day long, it wears me out. I will give to invest in my people, but I need some things for myself too. I need to talk about some VES. I need to talk about some hose advancement stuff, something like that. And that's the balance. Is I hope that whatever crew you're on, you can kind of find that balance of people like you and I that really want to dig into those things, and the people that aren't really bought in to anything, that just kind of want their TV and all that. Finding a way to meet everybody where they're at, and that's the balance that you got to find, and that's not the easiest thing to do either.
Yeah, and I've had a crew, that would train from sun up to sundown and never bat an eye, right? We were all on the same page. We were into it. We wanted to do it. And I've had crews where you would struggle to get an hour or two of training in, and that's fine. Like you said, it goes back to the balance. But what I would say is that if firefighting is not the common ground of everybody in that firehouse, then something's wrong, because we all have different interests, right? Some people like to hunt and fish. Some people like to go ride mountain bikes. Some people like to go out on jet skis. Some people like to golf, right? Some people are weird like me and like to literally like zone out on the couch for their entire day off and watch, slow movies, like you said, right? So, but at the end of the day, if you are on the fire department, right, I don't care if you're a volunteer, a career, or whatever, right? Like, you should at some level enjoy pulling hose. You should at some level enjoy throwing ladders. And I get it. Do you think that, professional athletes love to practice? Like, there's probably plenty of days where they wake up and they're like, yeah, I could really do without this today, but it's just kind of but at some level they enjoy it, like, or they wouldn't do it. So that's where I say that common ground. And like you said, like, I think it's tough to force people to be something they're not, right? So if you're there, if I can get 2 hours some point throughout the day, whether it's 15-minute chunks or 2 hours straight, I don't care, right? I can go in, let's say 2 hours. 2 hours is somehow like the ISO acceptable interest of fire service, right? Because it'll equal your hours by the end of the year. But I think if you're getting some chunk of time throughout the day where you can discuss fire stuff, and if you ask me, I'd rather have it spread out, because I think when you formalize it into we have to have 3 hours right now, it just gets lost in translation. I'd rather go look at a building for 20 minutes and stretch hose once, and then go back and goof off for a little while, and then go after it again, and it doesn't even feel like training at that point. And there's a time and a place to drill and drill and drill, but yeah, if everybody in that firehouse is not at some level excited to do the skills and tasks of the job, then I don't know, who am I to judge, but maybe you have the wrong career. Maybe you have the wrong, way to spend your time. And like you said, it's give and take, right? And it is hard to expect people to go for 24 hours nonstop, constantly. Like, you do have to sit down at some point, right? You do have to rest. You do have to mentally kind of let things go. And sometimes it's TV, and sometimes it's the bay, and sometimes it's the kitchen table, and sometimes it's everybody dispersing, away from each other and just having that, mindful time with themselves.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm at too. And literally the I guess struggle that I guess is a good way to put it, that I'm kind of in the midst of right now is, I'm not even close to asking for all day, to be involved all day, or to train all day, not even close. I'm just, like you said, you give me 2 hours, and I'm happy. Give me that time to help me feel like I did something, or learned, grew, whatever it is. Help me to feel like we kind of learned something as a crew, or learned something about each other, or did something together to where we know our limitations, our goods and our bads, all that thing, all that stuff. It's just a little bit of time. I mean, it's not all day. I'm not asking for something that is just undoable. And then that's kind of been the struggle, is just to set that expectation, and not only set it, but to be the person that stands up and enforces it all the time, day after day and day after day, because that's where we're at. If you are talking about truly creating, maintaining, changing, sustaining, whatever you want, whatever you're at in culture, if you're into changing it, or making it maintain, it's work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of patience, and so that's the struggle of if that's what you're wanting to accomplish, man. You have to be bought into it yourself before anybody else is going to be bought into it.
For sure. It's funny you say that. So not to turn your show around on you, but I'm going to throw something at you here because it's
Okay.
something that's been on my mind here for a few months, and I'm curious your perspective on it. But so I think kind of twofold with the message in the fire service right now, and maybe kind of the not so good side of the push for leadership and culture with the social media stuff is that I think we've painted this picture of success, which is guys that always want to drill, right? And please don't take this wrong, right? If you are getting your crew to stretch miles of hose a month or throw miles of ladders, right? Or your senior guy and your captain are out there every night shining on your fire engine, like I think that's awesome, right? But I also think that's kind of like a unicorn thing in the fire service, right? I don't think that's the norm. And so I think there's a lot of pressure on people that are into the fire service, at any level of passion, right? From the wide open, I do nothing but, fire service, go to bed, fire service, go to bed, to the guys that are like, hey, I really want to do a good job on here. I'm interested in continuing my training, but I do have other interests and I do have a family, and, I have to turn it off sometimes. But I think that measure of success now is putting a lot of pressure that if you're not doing what this nationally recognized speaker with 40 million, jobs on his resume says, you're a failure. If your crew is not putting line on the ground every shift, you're a failure. If you can't throw a 35 by yourself, you're a failure. And I don't think that's the intent of the message at all. I think the people
Yep.
that are putting that stuff out there are just trying to motivate you, trying like, hey, this is what we're capable of do, push yourself. But I think people take it to heart, and I've done it. And that's why I say, like, I've gone to work with a plan. I want to do this, this, and this, and not been successful. And it's really beat me down. And then the flip side of that is, I think that those examples come from a very unique situation with a bunch of people that are on the same page, that are bought in, and they all want to do it. So, if, I hate the one that says, attitude reflects leadership, right? I understand the premise behind it, but what if Jeremy, what if they transfer you tomorrow and you're set up with four guys that could really give two shits about this job? And you're trying to motivate them, you're trying to train them, and they're just not, they're the bad news bears. They're not getting it. Does that mean you're a failure? Your failure as a leader, or is that failure at the followership level of your crew? And that's kind of where my head's at right now. It's just I
Oh
think
yeah.
we have a lot of good people beating themselves down because of circumstances that are just not in their control, and they're more successful than they think they are.
Yeah, that man, that's I kind of glanced or just kind of grazed over earlier of this year has just beat me down. And that is literally the kind of the underlying reason that I say that is I literally get fired up on my off days for work. And it's weird. I sit here and I talk to you when I'm home and just I enjoy it. I learn, I grow, I get fired up to go back and share that enthusiasm and inspiration. And literally 5 minutes after I walk in that firehouse with, the air quote COVID crap, or somebody's upset about this or that, or I'm done. I'm already wiped out. All of that drive and inspiration that I had coming into the day is gone instantly. And it's like from that point on, that entire shift, I'm working off of just pure internal drive and willpower to make something out of it. Sometimes it's a lot, and we get a lot done. And sometimes I don't have much, and I don't have much to give to fight against it, and you just coast wherever it coasts. And uh, now it has been it's like screwed with my mind and my ego so much here lately, because more times than not, I feel like a piece of crap as a leader at work and at home. And that's just being honest, because I want, I have this vision of how I want things, especially at work and at home too, obviously, what I want the culture to be, what I want things to look like. And I just, and before I go any further, I work with great people. I have no complaints about the people I work with. We are on way different levels of drive, passion, all of that, but they're good people. Uh, but it's just a struggle to really find a place to meet everybody where they're at, to give some of my passion to them, hopefully, and bring them up at the same time. I'm kind of backing down a little bit so I'm not rubbing people raw or running people off. And man, it's tough. And somebody I really enjoy talking to is Ben Martin. He looks at things that from a lot different perspective than most of us, because he's got a lot more intelligence in the area of human nature and all that. And
Ben
man,
is
there
too
is
smart
so
to be a
much.
fireman. He's too smart to be a fireman. That's all there's. That'll be Dr. Ben
There's
very
so much to learn. Oh yeah.
and see, I go back to, I think part of that too is that those moments that you feel like a failure as a leader, I think those are actually more important than we give them credit for. Because if you have a day where you go in and you have plans that, hey, we're going to train today, we're going to work on this, I'm going to do all these things. And it's one of those days, like you just talked about, having, right? Nothing goes to plan, right? A call came at the wrong time, something came down the pipe that you got to deal with that maybe is not on your agenda. You didn't make time to do your workout. You probably could have worked out, but you chose not to, right? You could have made time to pull a line, but it was easier that day to just say, screw it. Your head wasn't in the game. If you're going to bed that night at the station, beat up over that, that shows that you care. And I think that's more important sometimes than fighting through it just to say you fought through it and giving it a half-ass effort, just so you could say you checked the box for that day. I would rather have a complete failure to remind myself that I still cared than to say, hey, I don't worry, I checked that box again, and also the, kind of like you said, right? Like people get so confused, I think, with what good people are, right? Like you don't have to have an assault team of firefighters on your rig to do good things, right? It's not practical. Most of us will get lucky a few times in our career and have that where everybody's on the same page. But maybe victory for you with your particular crew that day is like, hey, we trained today and nobody complained. Or, hey, we pulled cross lights today and the guy that has never got it right got it right. Is he a rock star? Nope. But guess what? He's better today than he was yesterday. And part of that is your influence, and so I think if we get more manageable about it, and that's where I say, like, again, I understand why the message is out there, do this and you'll succeed. But I also think it's kind of setting people up for failure, because if you're, it's kind of unfair to look at it without looking at the environment, right? If everything was the same, apples to apples, I could see that, hey, if you're not doing this, but the recipe is not as simple as, hey, go take Chief whoever's class and do exactly what he's done in his career and you'll be successful. And if it doesn't work out, you're like, oh, well, it must be me. Well, no, maybe it's not. Maybe you're having more of an impact than but the result is different, so you don't see it. I hate watching people, because what happens is you take people that are like, most of the people you talk to on your podcast, right? They're all in, they got drive, and then slowly over time, they don't feel like they measure up, and what do they become? The very people they fought against their whole career. And that's how people get burnt out at 15 and 20 years and throw their hands up and end up in that recliner. There are plenty of good people riding a recliner right now because they just gave up. And I understand why, I understand why. And it could be any of us. So before you point the finger, I would say the goal is that if you're the driven one on your crew, you should be trying to get your people to the 1 or 2 bad days you're probably going to have a month where you don't want to do anything. That one of them is like, come on, Cap, we need to go pull lines today. I don't need you the other 8 days, bro, but this is the day I needed you and you met that challenge. So thank you. Right. And maybe they wouldn't have done that without your influence.
Yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, absolutely. Getting your crew, no matter how many, if it's 2, if it's 12, whatever, however many you got, whoever it is, that even if it's somebody that's 90% of the time doing the driving, that 10% where they don't have it, if you got a crew that somebody comes along and picks that slack up and carries the cart for that, that 10% at least, that's a good place to be, I think, as a crew. I don't, like you said, the unicorns. I can't imagine there's a whole lot of examples of just a entire crew that is just all exactly on the same page and all wants the exact same levels of everything. So you have to find those kind of areas of I'm okay carrying it 75% of the time. I need 25% out of you guys. You the rest of you. And man, I think it's a good place to be. Yeah, that's teamwork right there, really, if you want to break it down.
One of the conversations I had on that topic that really struck me was that I think it was at HROC one year. I was talking to a guy. We were doing like a machine rescue class, and one of the cadre, I wish I remember his name, but he was from FDNY. And, we got to talk about staffing and the benefits of staffing versus not, and the different experiences you get with that. But his point was, man, you don't think we have mutts in the FDNY? You don't think we have people that don't give two craps about this job? Like, we have this giant aura about how we're the gold standard, and we've got the same problems every. And when you put that perspective, you realize that your struggle is not that unique, to the fire service.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I saw a post that really kind of goes along with exactly where we're at right now on your page. I'll just read it. It says, the best we can give is our best, even when it doesn't seem like that's enough. And obviously it's pretty much summing up everything we're talking about, just in different words. But man, that is kind of a struggle for me. I do want to get better every day. I do want to try to improve and all that. And sometimes, like we talked about, it doesn't seem like it's getting there, but it's just like a slow grind, just that whatever you want to call it, 1 pound of pressure constantly pushing. And so I think another angle to go off that is just, are we honestly answering that? Or are we honestly saying that this is our best? I think that's a really big key of that whole statement is it's good to say that, but are you really being honest about giving your best? Because I think that's the hardest part about that is yeah, I could say, man, I tried my best. I don't feel like it's good enough, but that was my best. Well, was it really your best? And you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And your best is going to evolve too, right? Like, if you're really
Yeah.
improving, like the best you had 6 months ago should be less than the best you're at today, right? Or maybe you regress, right? You've got to kind of take a step back. And I think too, it's all about perspective in a lot of ways. And I think what a lot of us that are driven get caught up in is that there is a never ending list of things we need to do, right? Like, we will never be good enough in many ways. Like, there's always something looming that we didn't get to, or a skill we're not as good at, or a person that needs a little more training. But what I have tried to do more to protect my own sanity is that when I get feeling like that, I try to look back 6 and 12 months to where I've come from, as a person, as a crew, as a department, and like, well, it's really easy to forget about all these victories we had, right? It's really easy to forget that, hey, like this station pride thing worked out, right? You guys are doing your lockers, right? Well, that's a victory for me, right? It may not feel like a big, improvement, but you're doing something better for the station and the people, right? Maybe you changed a policy that's been horrible for years. Maybe you got a different perspective on hose loads or equipment, or you can go down the list, right? Maybe everyone in your crew can throw a ladder now by themselves where they couldn't before, right? So while there are still 100 tasks looming in your future, it's really easy to overlook the things that you did succeed at, where you did apply your best and now you're seeing the results. And I think you have to see both. Otherwise, you get in that vicious circle of just constantly, we got to keep going. There's not enough time. We're in a hurry. You're never going to catch up. You're not going. And that's why it takes a career to be good at this job, because if you could figure it out in a month, everybody would, and we'd go on autopilot. It's not the case.
Yeah, and I'm going to very loosely paraphrase this because it's been a while since I've seen it, but it was something that Marc Van Oppen put out on his page. And basically, like I said, loosely, but basically said sometimes you have to take a step back to see the true benefits and the true kind of advancements that you've made towards the culture. Because sometimes when you're so into it, so focused on, doing this to keep kind of an upward slope of where you're going, it's hard to see. But like you say, you take a step back, you look at 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, and you could really start to say, man, it doesn't feel like a lot has happened or a lot has gotten better, but man, if you take a step back and look at it, we have really gotten a lot done. We've really gone a long ways towards our goal, and that's important. You know, it's important just talking personally, and that's something I kind of forget to do is to do that, to slow down, to stop, to take a step back, to really get a good perspective on where you at compared to where you are or where you were when you kind of first started your journey. So
It's kind of like your gear, right? You know, eventually your gear is oversaturated to where you don't realize how much heat it's holding, right? And it's the same thing when you're that involved in trying to change things and trying to be a, you know, progressive, for lack of a better word, but right, you're just trying to have an impact. It's really easy to just get weighed down with everything, and like you said, you know, sometimes you got to shed that gear to realize, holy crap, I was hot, right? Like I didn't realize how hot things had gotten. You know, you gotta, and even, you know, what I struggled with for the longest time, Jeremy, was that everybody, and this will kill you because I'll sound like the biggest hypocrite from where I was 3 and 4 years ago, right? But sometimes you need a down day at the station. Sometimes everybody needs it. You know, I'm all about training every day, but sometimes it's just as productive for everybody to make a big breakfast, hang out, bust chops. Maybe you talk about the job for a little bit. You do a little more talking than doing. And I'm not saying that needs to be a pattern, but everybody has things going on in their life. Everybody has things going on at work. Some days everybody is on that slump together where it's just more beneficial to just say, hey, we're not going to be good today, guys, but let's enjoy it, right? Let's just have it out. Let's all be down together and be better next shift, you know. And that's often overlooked by a lot of people, I think.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I get it too. We've had a few of those here lately, and you know, a lot of that leads back to or leads into communication. You know, if you've got a person that is really dealing with some stuff and they need to just kind of hang out while everybody else is training, I I can handle that. Just let me know. I mean, tell me if something's going on. Tell me, hey man, I just need some recliner time right now. I need to go lift weights by myself right now. Whatever it is, I am a lot more likely to handle that in a good way if I know what's truly going on, and that goes a long ways for me, and I'm sure for anybody in the leadership position is just just having the trust between you and your crew to be able to really just tell what's going on and say sorry, I don't have it today. I'm gonna just kind of hang out and chill and whatever, and that's a big piece of that is as long as we're communicating and we know what's going on. Yeah, absolutely. There's times that's just as beneficial as spending several hours doing whatever it is we're doing for sure.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, like what's important, right? What's important is what we do when we roll out of the bag, not what we do in it, right? So if you were up with your kid all night, or you're having problems at home, or you're just more out, right? I would rather have you. Now, I don't want you doing it in a common area where somebody can walk in and see you passed out at 11 o'clock in the morning, because it's hard to explain. But go get your bump, take a nap, you know, center yourself so that, you know, if we get a run in an hour or two, you're going to be better off having that little bit of time than you would have been if I forced you to grind it out because it's daylight and we have to do this and that, right? So at some point, you got to look at the end game. The end game is, what are we doing outside, right? What, while training 9 times, probably 99 times out of 100, will always make us better at doing the job, you know, when we roll out those doors. There's still that 1% of the time where the answer is not trained. The answer is being a human and being compassionate and understanding that people are people, right? And letting them get into a place where they will be better off when we go answer that call here in 30 minutes or an hour.
For sure. Something else, that another post that I saw that really kind of I liked reading it, and it kind of spoke to me again, is you said that if your message isn't evolving, then neither are you. And that's again, it's just interesting seeing these things, because that's literally, if I sit and think about it, that is where I've kind of been. And I've only been a station officer, a captain, for I think 3 years now, And if I look back 3 years ago at kind of my expectations for the crew that I have kind of saved and go through that whole deal when new members come or whatever, it is completely different. And it's not only completely different, it's been basically reworded and re-edited and flipped upside down and just several times. And I guess that just speaks to it's just a continual growth cycle. You learn something and then a little bit later you find out, well, maybe that wasn't really right, even though it felt like I learned something over where I was. You just continue to grow and continue to change that. And I know you put that out, but is that something that you continually see in your career as far as personally, just the just changing over and over and all that evolving, I guess?
Yeah, and that one is actually very personal because kind of like I just told you what we were talking about. Like I feel very hypocritical in a lot of ways because I know things that I have adamantly pushed out throughout my career, and I'm different now, right? Like if you had asked me
Yeah.
5 years ago, I would have told you that, hey, if you can't get your guys to buy into training 8 hours a shift when you're not running calls, you're messing up, right? And then I found the reality of that, which is that it's not always possible, right?
Yeah.
And, and I love that word evolve. I use it a lot because I think change is a very scary word for the fire service. And for some reason, evolve is a more comforting concept because it doesn't imply that there's fault, right? It implies improvement, where change says
Yeah.
we have to stop this and do this because this is wrong. Where evolve is like, let's just build on where we are. But yeah, I feel very hypocritical sometimes, and just like you, right? Like the speech, for lack of a better term, right, that I would give a new person in my crew in the early years of being a company officer is a far cry from the conversation that we have now, right? Which is
Yeah.
very much like I don't have any expectations because I don't know you yet. So let me tell you what to expect of me, and as I observe you for the next 10 to 12 shifts, I'll figure out where you're at and then I'll give you what I want out of you going forward, right? And that's a much different approach than, well, hi, I'm your company officer and I expect all these things out of you, which, hey, maybe you do anyway. And now I look like a jerk because I've automatically assumed that you suck, right? And so, but just like a lot of things have changed for me over the years. And, I think the nozzle debate is always the funny one because, and the irony with all this, man, is that it's not even about you being a hypocrite. It's that people will hold you to that, same in politics. Well, in 1974, you said this. So how dare you in 2020 suggest that, you don't support that, right? Like, that's a lot of time, and I was always big on the fog smoothbore debate, right? But let's be honest, what's changed since I started that? Well, when I started that, opinion and conversation, the only thing that I knew was a 100 psi automatic fog nozzle, right? And then a 50 psi smoothbore nozzle. Right? It was they're vastly different. But now when you have fixed gallonage, 50 psi fog nozzles that are going to do the same thing, like my argument is literally down to three things, which are cost, moving parts, and ability to pass debris, right? And those are three things you can never argue with. But I will also tell you that I've put out way more fires with a fog than I ever have a smoothbore. They both work. They both have a time and place, but people tell you, oh, well, that's whatever, man. We know where you're at on that topic. I'm like, that's where I was at. And this is where I am at now. I like to think I'm capable of learning. I mean, I know I'm like everybody else and I have my nuances where, I haven't grown in a lot of areas, but I am capable of some things of critical thinking and using data and experience to formulate a new opinion. So yeah, that's a very personal one. And I think people need to really take that to heart because it's people stop themselves from progressing because they feel hypocritical. They feel tied to this set of beliefs because that's what they're known for, or that's what they've pitted their whole approach on, and they're almost scared to get away from that person. And that's how you get this out of touch thing where you're just sticking to that because that's what you know, and you might even know better now, but oh well, that's the person I am, so I just got to ride it out. I mean, what are our careers most cases? 20, 25, 30 plus years. That's a bad place to be for a decade of your life because that's who you were before. What's the point of experience if you're not changing your opinion on some things? And some things you may validate, right? That's cool too. That's even better. Like, oh, this experience validates this, but you got to be smart enough to kind of say, okay, I did have that opinion, but now I know different, or now I feel different, I learn different, and kind of go forward with it.
Yeah. It's funny, like kind of on that same little level, just looking at one aspect with my department. I've been on 18 years. Up until, I don't know, I'm just guessing here, maybe 7, 8 years ago, our forcible entry was boot to the door. That was it. That's what we did. And we didn't know any better. We didn't, a set of irons was not in our vocabulary. We didn't know what it was. We didn't have them. We had the two pieces of a set of irons, but they were not a set of irons. And we were obviously not using them in that aspect. But then you have a group of people go outside of our department, get some great classes, some great training, and learn what forcible entry really is, and bring that back. And now, we are really good at it. I would say most generally just through our department of doing it like we are supposed to be doing it. Doing it using mechanical advantages and tools instead of wearing body parts out, kicking doors down. And so, yeah, if you're sitting there, standing on the soapbox of we've always kicked doors in, that's how we do it. We never had a problem with it. Well, once that kind of better way comes along, and you see that there are safer, more efficient ways of doing it, it's okay to say, all right, man, you brought up points that made me change how I'm doing things, or our department is doing things. So I appreciate that. This is a better way to do it, and go from there. Basically, it's okay to be wrong, and we, I think, as a fire service, really need to wrap our head around that statement a lot more than we do. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to admit that maybe we didn't know as much as we should, or whatever it is. It's okay, and you can apologize, or whatever, and we're going to make it better from this point. And I just think that there needs to be a lot more of that for sure.
I mean, everything works till it doesn't, right? So
Yeah.
maybe you guys had great success kicking doors down, right? And that's cool. I mean, again, I don't have the experience that a lot of these guys have, but I can tell you that there's plenty of doors I've hit trying to shock them that they just open, right? Like, which is the equivalent of kicking it. I just kicked it with a Halligan bar, and then there's been a few others where we had to do traditional force entry on it. So, but if you're doing this and somebody breaks a leg and your answer is not, well, maybe we should look at those irons, it's that, oh, well, he just didn't know what he was doing. No, like now you hit that point where it's maybe we weren't wrong, but now we know better. So let's again evolve going forward and not keep breaking people's legs when we have this giant piece of metal on a truck that is indestructible. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's probably a good place to kind of to wrap it up. If it do you have any other kind of ideas, thoughts, anything else that you want to bring up before we tie it up?
No, I think we hit some high points right now, just where I'm at as far as my mindset in the fire service and what I see, my own experiences and my conversations with people, and hopefully again soon in my travels if we ever get back to that point. But yeah, I think it's overcomplicated sometimes. I think we make a fairly simple job pretty complicated, and it goes back to what we started with, right? Just finding that center and that balance, and maybe not being open-minded to the point where you're flexible on everything, but at least enough to hear somebody else's perspective. And maybe you don't have to buy the whole thing, but maybe there's a piece of what they're pushing that fits into yours, and they'll give you the courtesy right back with theirs, and that's how you find that middle ground. So um, but yeah, I've enjoyed it, man. I think it's great to sit down with people that kind of share those thoughts, and like you said, it's good to hear what you're saying through somebody else's voice almost, right? It's really validating.
Yeah.
It helps kind of reinforce it. And I think most of us know that we don't have all the answers, right? There's plenty to figure out, but as long as you're trying to do better every day, whether that means sticking with what you've known, or putting yourself out there, or usually a combination of both. I mean, that's all you can do. And my new mindset thing, Aloan, is give yourself a little credit once in a while. Don't be so hard on yourself. Especially if you're one of those people that is a big driven force in your department, right? Like they need you. They may not feel like they need you, but they do. And if you give up, who's going to be left? So cut yourself some slack, take care of yourself too, and take care of the department at the same time.
Definitely some good thoughts right there for sure. Uh, so everybody out there that's listening, if they want to get a hold of you or want to see kind of what else you got going, like I mentioned earlier, you got the Unlock Your Culture webcast with some other great guys. Just kind of give whatever information that you're comfortable giving out and where they can find you or anything you got coming in the future or whatever you got going.
Sure. So obviously the Fire Inside on Facebook, and I'm slowly learning how to use Instagram finally. So those are kind of the two main places. I'm just straight up. It's kind of in a slump right now. I've been trying to write and it hasn't been coming out. So I'm hoping that now things are starting to get sort of back to normal here, hopefully, and it'll reduce, ease my mindset, right? But I try to do 2-3 post a week if I can. Just I want it to be organic though, so I'm not going to force it out. There's nothing. I'm not going to make you read crap just to say I put something out. But those are the main places. You can message the Facebook page. I don't answer numbers I don't know because I get so many of those robocalls. So it's kind of pointless to give out my phone number. If you ask me, just message me. If we need to hook up, we can. The Unlock Your Culture webcast. Real quick, it just kind of bloomed. It took the theme of the conference and just said like, hey, we're just gonna throw out a topic about culture once a month and hopefully find us an awesome guest and bring them on and pick their brains. So it's me, Sean Duffy, and Pablo Jenner from Build Your Culture, and then John Hayawake from Beyond the Basics Training, also the Thin Red Line podcast. So awesome group of guys. And, we all have lives. So sometimes it's all of us, sometimes it's two of us, whatever, but we just kind of get on there and pick somebody's brains. We do it. It's always on a Sunday at 7 p.m. It's kind of what we've fallen into. And it's basically what we're doing here, but instead of putting it on the podcast things, we do it live where you can register so that it becomes sort of a roundtable. If you want to interact, ask questions, you can ask the guest, and then we put it on YouTube afterwards if you're not able to do it live. And I think we've done 3 episodes. Our first one we got hacked and was an epic disaster, but we laughed it off, and so hopefully good things to come out of that. We've had good guests, we've had good topics, and generally there's like an underground meeting afterwards where we turn the record button off and we, everybody that's scared of losing their job for having an opinion gets to kind of let loose. So if that interests you, we're the place to be. But those would be the 2 big ones. I do have a website, thefireinsidepage.com. I've got stickers and coins and I think some t-shirts and stuff on there. I normally keep a schedule where I'm going to be speaking, but that's pretty desolate right now with the world events. I do have one on the books for Pennsylvania for next year. I'm working on one for Alabama, and hopefully, fingers crossed, some good news on the stuff I got in for conferences going into next year that A, I'm accepted, and B, they happen. But man, I want to thank you. You make my commute better, Jeremy. I've listened to every episode so far. You've had a bunch of killer guests. I really am humbled that you asked me on here. I don't really consider myself on the same level as a lot of people you had. So I do appreciate it. I've had a blast doing it, man. And I just like talking to people that are on the same wavelength.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. I wanted to make sure to reiterate this whole Unlock Your Culture thing. You like you said, you've only had 3 episodes so far, 3 real episodes so far, but they've been really, really good. Really enjoyed the first one. Was it John Dixon? Is that who your first one was with?
Yeah. He was our 1A. He was minus the hash.
Yeah. Normalization of deviance was really, really good. I really enjoyed that. I think this second one you lost your guest, so it was more of a round table, and then the third one was with Mike Bernard, which I've had on. Super fun to interview. A great, passionate guy. So.
Yeah, we were supposed to have Brian Pennington on the second one, and
that's right.
His department really hard, and they've had staffing issues. So I'm hoping we can get him back. My goal is to try to get him on in December because selfishly I feel like he's very Santa-like because he's very jovial and upbeat, and I just feel like he would make a great holiday episode. So I'm fingers crossed that'll work out. And our announcement for November will be out very soon. So we'll get that posted and advertised and hopefully have another great discussion.
Good deal. If you have not listened to those, you can go to YouTube and look those up. Definitely worth your time to do that.
That's
So
right.
anyway, I appreciate it, man. Had fun, learned as always, and just really look forward to continuing to kind of get to know you and seeing where you go and what your message kind of evolves, as we said, in the future. So thank you very much.
Yeah, same here, man. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you once again for spending some time with us today. I really appreciate you tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed the show and gained a little knowledge, a little growth, grabbed a few takeaways, and hopefully it'll carry you into the rest of the week and look forward to seeing you again. Wanted to take a short amount of time to thank my podcast sponsor, Woods Forcible Entry Door Kit. It's a great product. I love it. I own one myself. We use it all the time at the Firehouse that I'm at and just really love it. Great tool for training, great tool for exercise and working out, and I've said it before, this is a group of guys that are doing great things for the fire service and just a good solid group of guys. So I'm very appreciative for being a part of that team. So thank you to them. Please go check them out. And as always, if you don't mind, share, like, subscribe, download, whatever it is on whatever platform that you're listening to. If you enjoy what you're hearing and appreciate the content and the guests, I would really appreciate taking a little bit of time and doing that for me. Just to kind of helps the visibility of the show and just helps me, to be honest, know that I'm doing the right thing and headed the right direction. So thank you very much for everything you do and sharing the show and just helping me get my message out. So thank you. Hope you have a great week. Look forward to having you back again. And until then, stay safe, take care of each other.